Assignment number 6, Pronouns. This lesson is taken from Grammar and Punctuation, a Pocket Style Manual, 8th edition, pages 30 through 38. Pronouns are words that substitute for nouns, like he, she, it, they, etc. Pronoun errors are typically related to the 4 topics discussed here. First of all, pronoun antecedent agreement. Next, pronoun reference, then pronoun case, and pronoun case again. With C and D, pronoun case in C is the use of pronouns such as I versus me, and in D, in pronouns who versus whom. Let's start with pronoun antecedent agreement. The antecedent is a word that the pronoun refers to. So the pronoun and its antecedent agree when they are both singular or both plural. Thus, agree. Let's look at some examples here. In the first case, we have singular, and in the second, plural. That is, our subject is singular, and our subject in the second case is plural. The antecedent in the first case is teacher, and the antecedent in the second case is teachers. Therefore, the pronoun must be in the first case singular, as is its antecedent, and in the second case, plural, as is its antecedent. So the teacher finished creating his lessons. Teacher and his agree in that they're both singular. The teachers finished creating their lessons. The pronoun there is plural, and it agrees with its antecedent, which is also plural, teachers. Indefinite pronouns are pronouns that refer to non-specific persons or things, thus indefinite. Let's look at some examples here. In this class, everyone performs at his or her, not their, own fitness level. Let me read that one more time. In this class, everyone performs at his or her own fitness level. So the indefinite pronoun here is everyone. So remember that the word everyone is an indefinite pronoun, and though we often think of that as plural because it generally refers to many people, it's actually referring to many people but one at a time, thus everyone. So we treat this as if it's a singular pronoun. So since it's singular, the antecedent, his or her, is also singular. But if we said their, it would be plural, right? And that doesn't match everyone. Okay. Here's another example of anyone, which is another indefinite pronoun. If anyone wants to audition, he or she should sign up. When we speak, we generally say they with a sentence such as this. If anyone wants to audition, they should sign up. We say that sort of informally. But when you're writing, you should keep in mind that the pronoun should match its antecedent. And in this case, the pronoun is singular. Anyone, an indefinite pronoun. So again, we're looking at pronouns and their antecedent agreement. First, we looked at indefinite pronouns, and now we're looking at what's called generic pronouns, or generic nouns. Generic noun represents a typical member of a group, such as a student, or a member of a group, such as any lawyer. Although generic nouns may seem to have plural meanings, they are singular. And that's the key. That's why I underlined a generic noun, singular. Let's look at a couple of examples. Every runner, there's our generic noun, and it's generic because we're not talking about one specific person. So every runner must train rigorously if he or she wants to excel. Again, we tend to want to say every runner must train rigorously if they want to excel. But grammatically, that's incorrect because runner in this case is singular, right? So we need to make sure that the pronouns match the generic noun. Every runner, he or she. Another example, a medical student, again, generic noun, which is the antecedent, it must match its pronoun, he or she. Every medical student must study hard if he or she wants to succeed. So we would not want to write a medical student must study hard if they want to succeed. That would be grammatically incorrect. Okay, so now let's look at collective nouns, another kind of noun. As you might guess, collective nouns are nouns that include more than one person or more than one of something. And so a collective noun would be jury or committee or audience, crowd, family, team. In American English, collective nouns are usually singular because they emphasize the group functioning as a unit. Let's look at some examples. The planning committee. Now we know that a committee is made up of more than one person, and so we might think of committee as being plural, but really it is singular because it is one committee, one thing. So the planning committee granted what? Its, not their, but its permission to build because the committee is singular. The disorderly what? Crowd. That's a collective noun. It's one crowd, so it's singular. The disorderly crowd lost what? Its, not their, but its mind when the announcement was made. So we looked at pronoun antecedent agreement, and now let's look at pronoun reference. When Andrew got home, he went straight to bed. In this sentence, the noun Andrew is the antecedent of the pronoun he. A pronoun should refer clearly to its antecedent. So that's what we'll be looking at with pronoun reference here. In every case, we're going to look at examples where, first of all, they are not clear, and then in the next case, we clear them up by fixing them grammatically. In the first case, ambiguous reference. Ambiguous means unclear or confusing. And this occurs when the pronoun could refer to two possible antecedents. If you look up ambiguous reference examples, you might find some rather humorous sentences. Let's take a look at this one. When Aunt Harriet put the cake on the table, it collapsed. Well, the question is, which collapsed, the cake or the table? So that shows the ambiguity of the statement or the unclearness of the statement. And to clarify it or clear it up, we would say the cake collapsed when Aunt Harriet put it on the table. So in many of these cases with ambiguous reference, we're forced to have to change the organization of the sentence altogether in order to make it clear. Another example is called implied reference. A pronoun must refer to a specific antecedent, not to a word that's implied but not actually stated. Okay, so let's look at examples. Or an example, after braiding Anne's hair, she decorated them with ribbons. Well, there's an implied reference here. After braiding Anne's hair, Sue decorated them with ribbons. Well, them is our pronoun, and it's implied that it's, we have to look, right? Sue decorated them. Well, what did she decorate? We have to look back at the first part of our sentence. After braiding Anne's hair, Sue decorated them with ribbons. I guess it would be the braids, right? But that's the entire message here with implied references. You don't want to imply what you're referring to. That's called implied reference. You want to make it clear to your reader to what you are referring. So to clarify this, we would have to say, after braiding Anne's hair, Sue decorated what? The braids with ribbons. The third example of unclearness or ambiguity with respect to this topic is vague reference of this, that, or which. So in this case of C, we're looking at specific pronouns, this, that, or which, and then we'll look at the specific pronouns, they, it, or you. Okay, let's look at this, that, or which. Pronouns this, that, and which should ordinarily refer to specific antecedents rather than to whole ideas or sentences. When a pronoun's reference is too vague, either replace the pronoun with a noun or supply an antecedent to which the pronoun clearly refers. Let's look at examples because that's a lot of words. Television advertising has created new demands for prescription drugs. People respond to this by asking for drugs they may not need. Well, it's a little unclear and a little vague as to what this is referring. So we can clarify this in this way. Television advertising has created new demands for prescription drugs. People respond to the ads by asking for drugs they may not need. So what have we done? We've taken the pronoun this and clarified the sentence and the message in the sentence by telling the reader exactly what it is that they're responding to, not just this, but the ads. Here's another example, and I think this is a little clearer. Romeo and Juliet were both too young to have acquired much wisdom, and that accounts for their rash actions. Well, it's a little unclear what that is. Their rash actions are accounted for by that. Well, what is that? We can clear that up. Romeo and Juliet were both too young to have acquired much wisdom, a fact that accounts for their rash actions. What's caused their rash actions? The fact that they were too young to have acquired much wisdom. And now let's look at indefinite reference of they, it, or you. The pronoun they should refer to a specific antecedent. Do not use they to refer indefinitely to persons who have not been specifically mentioned. Here's examples. They announced an increase in sports fees for all student athletes. Well, the question that is begged naturally by the reader is, who is they? We can clarify that, clear it up by saying who they is. The board announced an increase in sports fees for all student athletes. Here's another example. In the encyclopedia, it states that the male moths can smell female moths from several miles away. Now, this is a mistake that's made very frequently by writers. This type of mistake, where we're rephrasing the subject by using the pronoun it. In the encyclopedia, it states. Well, it's almost as if there's a little man inside the encyclopedia, or a little bug or something, right? But let's clear it up. The encyclopedia states. There, we're getting directly to the point. What states that a male moth can smell female moths from several miles away? The encyclopedia does. Here's another example. Miss Pickergill's Guide to Etiquette stipulates that you should not arrive at a party too early. Well, what is the pronoun here? It is you. And this guide to etiquette stipulates that you should not arrive. Well, in this case, you is a big word because it means that everyone really should not arrive. But we can clarify that out, specify it by saying Miss Pickergill's Guide to Etiquette stipulates that what? A guest should not arrive at a party too early. I'm sure that those who are preparing for the party will arrive early, and they should arrive early. So we want to make sure that we are specifying who it is that shouldn't arrive at the party too early. Okay, so for number 2, we looked at pronoun reference to what is the pronoun referring, and then for 3, we look at pronoun case. Personal pronouns change what is known as case form according to their grammatical function in the sentence. And I would encourage you guys to look in your textbook at the chart found on page 34, which is a reference that I'm referring to here. Let's look at compound word groups. You may sometimes be confused when a subject or an object appears as part of a compound structure. To test for the correct pronoun, mentally strip away all the compound structure except the pronoun in question. Here are some examples. While diving for pearls, Ikiko and her found a sunken boat. Well, we can clarify this. While diving for pearls, Akiko and she found a sunken boat. Why Akiko and she and not Akiko and her? And how do we know? Well, you could strip away all the compound structure except the pronoun in question. So in this case, we would strip away Akiko and. We would not say while diving for pearls, her found a sunken boat. We would say while diving for pearls, she found a sunken boat. So that's what I mean by strip away all the compound structure except the pronoun in question. Okay? And the pronoun in question here, that is the one we don't know for sure which to use, is she or her. So take all of the rest of that compound structure away, and you should be able to tell. Here's another example. The most traumatic experience for her father and I occurred long after her operation. Let's clarify it. The most traumatic experience for her father and me occurred long after her operation. Her father and me is the object of the preposition for. We see the prepositional phrase for her father and I. And it should be for her father and me. If you strip away the words her father and to test for the correct pronoun, you would come to that conclusion. And now let's look at appositives. I think most people have heard of appositives and were at one time familiar with them, maybe in high school. But we don't talk about appositives other than in English classes, and so we forget what they are, right? So let's take a look at appositives, a rather important part of grammar. Appositives are noun phrases, so more than one word, that rename nouns or pronouns. A pronoun used as an appositive has the same function, usually subject or object, as the word it renames or the words it renames. Okay, let's look at some examples here. The chief strategists, Dr. Bell and me, could not agree on a plan. Well, what is the appositive here? A positive is a noun phrase that renames nouns or pronouns. So the noun or pronoun that's renamed here is chief strategists. Dr. Bell and me. Let's clarify this. The chief strategist, Dr. Bell and I, could not agree on a plan. Okay, it's Dr. Bell and I. Again, if you strip away the Dr. Bell and, okay, you would see that, or hear, that Dr. Bell and me becomes me could not agree on a plan, and you wouldn't say me could not agree on a plan, but you would say I could not agree on a plan, and that's the best way to determine the order of those words. Here's another example. The reporter interviewed only two witnesses, the shopkeeper and I. Well, we need to clarify that. The reporter interviewed only two witnesses, the shopkeeper and me. Well, in this case, it's the shopkeeper and me, because in this case, me is the object and not the subject. Okay. And let's look at C, we or us before a noun. When deciding whether we or us should precede or come before a noun, choose the pronoun that would be appropriate if the noun were omitted. So again, you'd strip away part of it to determine what word to use. Okay. Examples. Us tenants would rather fight than move. We clarify it by saying we tenants would rather fight than move. If you strip away the noun tenants, you realize you would not say us would rather fight. You say we would rather fight. And then it becomes real clear. The same thing with our next example. Management is shortchanging we tenants. Management is shortchanging us tenants, right? In this case, us, because us is the object. And if you take away tenants, in both cases, it makes sense and it sounds right? Management is shortchanging we. No, you wouldn't say that. You would say management is shortchanging us. And then our last subtopic here is who versus whom. Who is subjective case pronoun. That means it's used as a subject, is used for subjects and subject complements. Whom, an objective case pronoun, is used for objects. The words who and whom appear primarily in subordinate clauses or in questions. Let's look at them in subordinate clauses. Example, he tells that story to whomever will listen. The subordinate clause is to whomever will listen. But it's incorrect. Let's clarify it. He tells that story to whoever will listen. Why is it whoever and not whomever? Because whoever is the subject of whoever will listen. Another example, you will work with our senior engineers, who you will meet later. It's actually supposed to be whom. You will work with our senior engineers, whom you will meet later. Whom is used as the object here. You will meet them, right? So whom is used as the object and the subject is you. Okay, so that was who versus whom in subordinate clauses. Now who versus whom in questions. When deciding whether to use who or whom in a question, check for the word's function within the question. Whom was responsible for creating that computer virus? No, it's corrected by saying who was responsible for creating that computer virus. Why who and not whom? Well, again, who is a subjective pronoun, so we use it as the subject, which it is in this case. Whom is an objective, so we don't want to use it as a subject. Next example, who would you nominate for council president? Let's clarify this. Whom would you nominate for council president? Now, some might think that because it comes at the beginning of the sentence that it's the subject, but it is not. The subject is you, because you are doing the action. You nominate whom. Okay. As usual, copy and paste the following, revise the sentences if necessary, and if there's no error, indicate by typing no error. Okay, good luck.